Hi, my name is Robert. This video is designed to give you step-by-step detailed instructions on completing the task at hand. Please read the comments in the About section of this video. It has valuable information and updates. My YouTube channel has a disclaimer video that I encourage you to watch. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you found what you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. In this video, I'm going to be installing a turbo boost gauge. In my opinion, if you have a car that has a turbo installed, a decent boost gauge is your only indication as to how that turbo in that system is functioning. So in essence, a turbo boost gauge is the pulse of your turbo system. Now this boost gauge that I installed, and I'm going to show you how I did that, has three primary features. It has a voltmeter, it has your fuel to air ratio, and then it has your boost. Right now the car's not running, so that's the boost at static, which should have been 0. Now that the car's running, my system shows the voltage for about a minute, and after it shows the voltage, it switches over to your boost. So here it goes. Okay, I was looking for a boost gauge to tell me the exact boost pressure I was getting in my Volvo, because I was having boosting issues and I'm thinking about doing some minor tuning. And I got on eBay and found a digital boost gauge that also has a voltage indicator, and I think it even has a airflow mix ratio indicator that I wasn't really interested in. But anyway, this is what I got for like $24. I got a digital boost gauge, I got the boost pressure sensor that wires to the gauge, I got some clear hosing, I got a T and some mounting hardware, I got a little mounting bracket, I got a little boost pod to hold it, and I got instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and install this boost gauge. I have decided that I'm not going to use that cheap clear plastic tubing to run my vacuum from the instrument indicator to my vacuum tree. So I got this vacuum tube here from the parts store, and I'm gonna swap it out. This stuff is very hard to kink or to restrict, where that other stuff may get moved or kinked or something like that. So that's the size I use. So here's the boost adapter. So this receives the boost from the vacuum gauge, and these wires and plugs plug into the back of the, or wire into the boost gauge. So let me go ahead and grab the instructions and show you where it goes. Just follow the instructions. The boost gauge says put a yellow on a hot battery, put a red on a hot that comes on and remain hot when you turn the key on, and the black to a ground, and the green to a boost sensor. And in my case, since I have the fuel air ratio mix, I'll wire that to my O2 sensor wire. Not sure which one, I have to test that and see. And then this little sensor thing I have has a red that goes to something that gets hot when the ignition's on, black goes to ground, and then white connects to the green wire on the boost gauge. So I have my multimeter here, and what I need to do is find some wires particularly close to where I'm going to have this boost gauge, and find a ground, a couple of hots, and then I'll have to run a longer wire to my O2 sensor wire. First thing I'm going to do is check for ground, so I'm going to select ohms over here on my meter. Then I'm going to back probe the switches, wires on the back of my headlight switch. Some people wire things to their dimmer switch, and since I don't think my gauge dims, at least not with a dimmer switch, I'm not going to do it. Now you could do this two ways. You could back probe wires, or you can just unplug the switch and front probe wires. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug the switch and do it that way. But you don't have to. If you want, you can back probe the plug like that. So let me try that first. Okay, to check for a ground, I select ohms on my meter here. So now I got ohms selected. I'm back probing my black wire, which I believe is ground. I'm taking my other wire, putting it on some bare metal over here by the door bolt. And now when I come back over here, as you can see, the ohms is halfway through the gauge. So when I pull that hand away from that bolt bare metal, it drops off. So that's going to be my ground for my gauge. So on my headlight plug there, that was in plug number 10. The next thing I'm going to do is look for 12 volts hot. So I'm going to pull my wire off of there. I'm going to crank this around to read some battery volts. I'm on the battery voltage reading there. And I'm going to back probe my wire number 6 here. The other wire I was on was actually number 10. So I'm going to back probe wire 6 because I think it's hot. And I'm going to see if I got 12 volts there when I hook my wire back up to that good ground I had. So I'm back probed on number 6 there. Now I'm going to come over here and put my wire on that. I should have voltage. And as you can see there, as soon as that comes in focus, I got between 10 and 16 volts. So I got about 12, 13 volts there. With the ignition off, I have that hot 12 volts. So now I'm going to look for 12 volts that switch when the ignition comes on. I think that may be in my wire harness number 4. So I'm going to back probe number 4. I got volts selected. Now I'm going to take this over and give it a ground. And when I come back over here, I have no volts. So I'm going to set my phone down and I'm going to turn my ignition on and see if I get volts. So let me hold this here, turn the ignition on. And as you can see, I have volts now, about 12 or 13 volts. So that's going to be my powered on power supply, which is a blue yellow wire on my car. I checked a couple more, and I also have a blue yellow wire back on the back side on pin number 7. That's a hot wire when the ignition is on, so I might use that for my other hot wire. So let me go ahead and get my connectors and splice in these gauge wires. These are the kind of quick splice connects I normally use. You normally don't have to strip the wires with them, but you put one wire in that way, and then you put the other wire across there, squeeze that down with a pair of pliers, and it splices into an existing wire, and you normally don't have to strip any wires. So let me go ahead and splice these wires in where I said I was going to on this light switch. Okay, this is how I'm going to put this splice together. I put a little black Sharpie mark on my feed wire to make sure it's fed through as far as I need it to. I got my other wire hooked on the connector. Now I'm going to squeeze that metal thing through both wires and they should be secure. After I made my splice, my wire pulled out. So evidently it wasn't enough meat on this wire to stay locked in that crimp. It's probably a 22 gauge wire, and my crimps are for 14 to 18 gauge. So I'm going to fold this wire here and try that again. So I'm going to push it in probably up to my thumb, remark it. Okay, it grabbed both wires and it's crimped in there. So I'm going to go ahead and back probe this wire, make sure I have 12 volts there right now. I unplugged the connector and I do have 12 volts there. So I'm going to go ahead and splice these other wires and go from there. Okay, I hooked my grounds up to grounds, my ignition power up to this ignition power line, and then my hot power up to that. So I'm going to go ahead and test those connectors before I tuck them, and then I'm going to run my vacuum line and splice into that. Now there's usually always some place to double check this power, either through the tip, through the side, or through the back of the plug, but you can get a multimeter poked in there somewhere and do that. Now here's the boost unit. It looks like there's enough space under my speaker to put this as well. So I'm going to plug this line in here, and then I'm going to feed the tube down under the dash and splice into the boost line that comes through the firewall and into the vehicle that way. So I pulled my 3 screws from my dash under panel and pulled that out. Now I have some wire there. It looks like maybe 16 gauge that I'm going to use to wire to the O2 sensor and splice into my little wire harness here. So when you come under the dash, there's ways that you could get through the firewall there. Now if you poke around under the dash, there's probably 2 or 3 different vacuum lines you're going to run into. Now the one to the turbo boost gauge has blue tape on it. There's a couple of cruise control and the brake servo vacuum tubes under there also. You want to avoid those, but find this one here. Now when you follow these tubes and wires that go through the firewall, behind this big circuit breaker panel, you'll find this little nipple connection thing. This is a junction that goes through the firewall, this thing here, so you can actually cut a hole in one of those tubes and feed something through the firewall to get it to come out the other side. So that's where I'm going to feed one of those green wires through. You can also follow the hood release cable. It goes through the firewall as well. So find one of those ways to get through the firewall with any wiring or tubing that you want to run out to the engine bay. So from under the hood, when you feed something through the car, you look under the brake master cylinder and you'll see that pass-through tube with all of the little nipples on it that you can cut off and get wires and tubes fed through. Right there. I'm going to have to lay across the motor to get this wire hooked up to this O2 sensor. So I removed the throttle body cover so I don't lean on it and break it. And I got an old car towel to lay across the motor so I don't burn myself with my skin against any motor parts. The easiest way to get things fed through the motor side is to take the end off the tube, feed whatever you want through the tube through there, and then feed it through here and close it up that way. Okay, I got my green wire through. That passage seemed like it's about a foot long, so don't get impatient. You might have to jab it a few times to get it past the ridges, but I did get my wire through that tube. Now I'm going to cut a little slice or poke a little hole in here, feed my wire through there, trying to keep this weatherproofing and slide this back on the end of it. Okay, there's my wire through the boot. I'm going to put the boot back on, splice into the front O2 sensor wire, and then hook it up to the gauge. And okay, I'm about to hook my green wire up to my signal on my O2 sensor. If you see right in the middle there, I'm going to zoom in, and my O2 sensor wire is coming off my sensor. Right above that ear tube, I got 2 whites, a gray, and a black. Somebody sent me a wiring diagram saying that the signal wire was the black one on the Bosch sensors. So I'm going to go ahead and splice into that. Okay, I got my splice in place and locked on my black wire. So now I'm going to take some of this slack out of the green wire, pull it back through the firewall. Now I'm going to take a small zip tie and zip tie the green wire to the side of that tube. And I may put a dab of sealant on there where that wire comes through, just to stop water and moisture from getting in there. Now if you have a 70 series car or a GLT and you don't have a turbo boost gauge already in your dash, you can actually come and tee off of the T under the throttle. Here's the T I made with the vacuum line. Make sure you get them on as far as you can. You might want to lubricate them with some saliva and push them on as fast and hard as you can, because you don't want them coming loose. Handling this tubing that came with this boost gauge, it's so soft and easy to bend. I think it would crimp easy. So I'm really going to urge you and recommend that you get some vacuum tubing and use it to make your boost pressure connections instead of this soft stuff that is typically used with supplying air in an aquarium. Okay, that's my T-junction. So I got my vacuum hooked up. If for some reason you don't feel like your vacuum's real tight or you're uncomfortable with it, you can get small zip ties and zip tie the hose to the T connections in places like that. I want my boost gauge to sit up here on top of my speaker grill and be sunk down in a little bit. So I cut a cutout in my speaker grill so that the wires could plug in the back and the gauge can sit down on there. And I'm going to poke 2 holes on the side so that I can zip tie it to the top of the grill. Okay, I'm probably going to take my gauge off and paint it flat black. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and secure it and test it. Okay, I got the boost gauge in place. Sit down in my speaker grill like I want it. I push the dimmer back in, the rear fog light switch back in, the light switch back in. Okay, I'm about to get on the freeway and get a boost reading. A little more traffic on the road than I want, but I'm almost at 50, so here it goes. If you feel that this information was beneficial, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you can get notification of future videos that I post. Visit my channel. I have all types of do-it-yourself videos there. You can leave questions here and I'll try to respond to them as quick as possible. You can also visit my website at robertspinner.com. Thanks again for watching.